modified. It's complicated, but it's kind of neat. By the way, that system I didn't mention before is really for slow movements, okay? Not for fast. The cerebellar comparator function takes a little time.
So the insula also associated with the cerebellum?
The insula, I'm not
Like
sure.
balance, so we balance together.
Well, that's a good point. The primary sensory area for balance is in the insula, so there has to be some linkage. However, insula is going to be conscious understanding of balance, okay? When we get into the cerebrum, if it gets to the cerebrum, we know that it exists, okay? If it doesn't reach the cerebrum, then it remains subconscious. So when we get, let's say, balance information going to the cerebrum, then we're aware that we're off balance, or we're aware that we're in a weird position. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, all right then. This is the map then of the white matter. Hello, Robert.
Hi.
Do they have any freebies at the RNC? Were you down there?
No.
Okay. Glad you made it. I know it's tough down there. Did you go to Metro? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I did
Oh,
not.
okay,
go
and
to
don't say,
Metro today, actually.
don't say any more.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So here is the map then of the white matter. And if you've been following me along, you know that neurons, axons that come into this route can synapse here, but then they can also rise up the cord. So in blue are what are referred to as ascending tracks. Okay, now that's what I'm talking about here, basics of ascending and descending tracks. Okay, so those are in blue. All right, and you can see that we have a portion here called the dorsal white column, which is a big area of ascending nerve tracks. And that's with a CTS tracks, not train tracks, with a CKS, okay? And you're talking about then, if you were to study these, you would find out that they are linked to certain areas of the body and to certain kinds of senses. I'm only telling you that because there is more to the story. An axon coming into here could go ahead and synapse here, but could then also split and rise in the dorsal white column. The dorsal white column typically carries sensory input that we are conscious of. So it's going to go to the thalamus and then to the cerebrum. Okay? Here we see dorsal spinal cerebellar tract, and then we have the ventral spinal cerebellar tract, and we have the lateral spinal thalamic tract. What's nice is the tract names help us to know where the information comes from and where it's going to. The first portion of the name, spino, tells us that these signals are coming from the spinal cord and rising. Now, more than likely, they came from sensory input away from the spinal cord. Okay? So there's the first one, spino. The second word, cerebellar or thalamic, tells us where the information is going to go next. So a spinocerebellar tract is carrying subconscious body position information. It's really cool. We are going to have one tract which is going to carry body posture and position information that is conscious and is going to rise to the cerebrum. And then we have another tract which is going to carry body position information and rise to the cerebellum. This one will be subconscious. We won't be aware of this information. This one will be conscious because it goes to the cerebrum. Okay? So why am I saying cerebrum? It says thalamic. It goes to the thalamus first. As we have learned, sensory information goes to the thalamus first and then is distributed to the right location in the cerebrum. It is all conscious. Okay? So that's a little bit on how to, let's say, interpret what you see. All blue information rising. Okay? In red, descending pathways. Again, the pathway name tells us a little bit about where the information is coming from and where it is going to. Here we have the tectospinal tract. Here we have the vestibulospinal tract. Here we have corticospinal tract and reticulospinal tract. Okay? Tell me, for a test, what is this information being carried on the red? What is it going to do for us?
Motor.
It's motor. Awesome. Okay? So now we start to look, where is it coming from? Corticospinal. What do we say? Voluntary, involuntary movement. What does cortico stand for? Cortex. Voluntary. This ventral corticospinal tract is carrying voluntary motor outputs. Vestibulospinal, tectospinal, reticulospinal, then the information is coming from other parts of the brain. Reticulospinal, we learned a little bit about the reticular system. We learned that it keeps us awake, but it also helps to control muscle movement. Rubrospinal refers to the red nucleus. Rubra meaning red. And remember that the red nucleus is carrying impulses that modify signals a bit. Okay? So without spending too much more time now, we start to get an understanding of signals that are coming from frontal lobe, corticospinal, or from lower areas of the brain, rubrospinal, tectospinal, vestibulospinal. Okay? There's more that could be said. You could spend a lot more time looking at these various pathways. The last thing that we look at then in the CNS are how many neurons to get the information from one place to another. It is generally thought that for a sensory signal to reach its terminal location in the brain, it takes 3 neurons and their synapses to get there. Ascending pathway is primarily a sensory pathway. It is thought that there are 3 neurons linked between the peripheral system and the central nervous system to get that sensory input to the appropriate location in the brain. First one's called first order neuron. Second one, interneuron. The third one, the third order neuron. The first order neuron is typically a sensory neuron. If we use the example of a pain detector in the finger, there is a nerve ending in the finger that can detect pain in a particular location. It's not a very big place. The nerve ending only covers a small portion of the skin. But if I burn myself there, that neuron is going to send the signal to the spinal cord, where it is going to enter the cord and it is going to synapse with our second order neuron. Okay? So the first neuron has done its job. It's brought the signal into the CNS. Now it could have collateral axons that go ahead and rise up in the spinal cord white matter. But we know it's carrying the signal to an interneuron. Cell body and dorsal horn of spinal cord or in the medullary nuclei. What's the difference here? From here down, goes into spinal cord. From here up, those pain signals go into the medulla. Okay? We are covering the head and face with a different set of nerves than spinal nerves. We're using cranial nerves there. Cranial nerves don't go into the spinal cord, they go into the brain directly. And that's why there's the difference. So the second order neurons are either in the brainstem or they are in the spinal cord. Okay? Axons extend to thalamus or to cerebrum, to cerebellum. If they go to cerebellum, that's it, dead end. We don't have a third order neuron. If they go to thalamus, then we have to get the signal from thalamus to the cerebral cortex so we can figure out what's going on. That's where we need the third order neuron then. And the third order neuron is going to carry that signal from the thalamus to the appropriate location in the cerebral cortex. Okay? So that's pretty common on the way up. And so we're going to see our first order neuron coming in this way, synapsing in here. our second order neuron is probably going to jump out into the white matter and then rise, and it's going to go all the way up to the thalamus, and then our third order neuron is not shown on here. Okay? This is the detailed stuff that I said no specific names or nuclei. So we're going to skip this slide. Okay? I'd love it if you looked at these things. You'd get a better understanding of what I'm telling you, but we don't have the time to cover. So now we think about the way down. The way down. The way down uses two neurons. The way down uses two neurons. It uses a neuron. If we're talking about way down now, we're talking motor signals, be they visceral, be they somatic. Motor signals coming down, okay? And our first order neurons, our upper motor neurons, their cell bodies are in the cerebral cortex. Frontal lobe cerebral cortex. That's where the neurons begin. Now, all the processing that goes on around up in there, we're not talking about. We're talking about the initial signal to move a body part. Starts in the frontal cortex and then makes its way down the spinal cord. Pyramidal cells in the primary motor cortex. The lower motor neurons then are in ventral horn of gray matter of spinal cord, and then they go out to the skeletal muscles. Okay? So, one neuron to get from here to, let's say, spinal cord here, and then another neuron to go out to the hand to move the thumb. Okay? Along the way, these neurons can share their information. They can send off collateral axons to go in different directions, but that's the basic path. Now let's put it all together and finish this chapter. Okay? Therefore, in order to have a complete pathway, you have a number of synapses and quite a distance for information to travel. You have 3 synapses just to get to the brain, okay? Not counting any places where you stop along the way. 3 synapses, that takes a little bit of time, right? APs are fast, but it takes a little bit of time to jump synapses. Once we get up in the brain and figure out what to do with that signal that's come in, okay, we then have another synapse or 2 to get down. Actually, 2 synapses. One's a neuromuscular junction, and one is a presynaptic, postsynaptic type thing. So I got one neuron here, and then it goes down to here, and then it synapses, and then it goes out to there. So let me put it to you this way. If I burn my finger, and I'm going to use my brain as the device which evaluates the signal and removes it from the hot stove, I got 3 synapses to get up there, I've got integration, and then 2 synapses back down. If you just add up the synaptic delay, your finger is getting burned while you're waiting, okay? Therefore, frequently, with withdrawal type reflexes where you're pulling your body part away from an injury, it stays at the level of the cord. That is, we get one synapse, we get sensory neuron to cord, synapse in the gray matter there, okay? Synapse with the appropriate motor neuron there, 2 synapses out to the body part to remove the part. The brain, through collateral axons from that sensory neuron, finds out you've been burned after the finger is moved away, okay? Because of synaptic delay, it takes just another moment after the burn for you to figure out that you've been burned, but the hand's already moved, okay? This is the beauty of spinal reflex. Not all of our spinal reflexes are to remove you from a source of injury, but some of them are, okay? All right? Okay? Okay, so we skipped an awful lot on ascending and descending pathways, including tons of names and nuclei. I will not test you on these things. I will carefully look at my exam, the one I currently have, and I will remove questions, and then I'll just put in some others, okay? All right. Okay, so I never like being this behind and confused. But we're doing